But unless you disconnect from it, in the way I've described in this talk, then there's a rubber band. Like I said, everything you pay for with Federal Reserve notes belongs to them. They can take it at any time for military necessity. So all this stuff about bail-ins, it's not fair, whatever, no, it's hardwired in the rules. Okay, that's the rubber band. So how can we have a transfer mechanism to create a new reality with the assets and the resources and the energy that we have outpictured into this containment field unless there's a true, balanced, stable receptacle to hold it? We can't, because there are rubber bands attached to it. So severing the attachments to the matrix, to the containment field, everything that's in what I've described is paramount. That's the transfer mechanism and the receptacle. The receptacle is understanding the law and how to create everything I've just described in the last 10, 15 minutes and start building assets and resources, monetary capacity to start building the new world that we want to live in. Remember, the title was How to Transform the World That We're Bound in and Bound Ourselves to into the world we want to live in. There must be both a transfer mechanism and a receptacle. But we only have to prime the carburetor, a little bit of transfer, because we are creation. We don't need to worry about, oh, we got to get my house because it's underwater and blah, blah, blah. Well, we can do that, but we don't really need to. We have built out the entire global infrastructure as slaves, but we just have to do the Spartacus effect. I just made that up. To rebel as slaves, but we don't want to rebel in the literal sense, because if you're a rebel, the system is designed to suppress insurrection and rebellion. But we want to timely and properly remove the presumption of consent and attachment and move ourselves over to this receptacle and build a new world, which every one of us has a piece to the puzzle. That's who we all are. That's who everybody here is. We are hardwired with a piece of the puzzle, and we've just been pretending that we don't have the capacity to do it. Most of you here and everybody here is at some level and degree woken up from that illusion. Okay? But we do need to use the way the system is constructed. And so in the synchronistic aspect of things that I described, certain things showed up in this last year. We were introduced to something that has existed in this world for hundreds of years. That's part of the original positing of the construct that ended up being the Roman Catholic Church and a lot of the other things about the time of Constantine. And it is a recognized crown, if you will, a sovereign body, that the story of it is long and convoluted. But in recent years, it has re-emerged. It is recognized as a sovereign authority equal to the rest of the sovereign entities on the world, but it has a unique standing because, for one, it's not contracted to the corporation. It's recognized by the UN, but it's not a member of the UN, which of course we wouldn't want it to be. And something else has happened over the last 20 years. There was a system of creating what was actually what is the original crypto or digital currency. It was a very complex system, but it's been refined over the last 20 years. And to make a long story short, because we don't have the time for it in this session, but basically it was adopted by this sovereign entity as its legal currency. And 10 years ago, the SEC tried to attack it and convert it in legal terms from a currency to a security, because everything is controlled as a security in this commercial venue that I've talked about. And they lost, which meant it is recognized in the United States as a currency. And there's other currencies associated with it. So this sovereign entity adopted this currency as its legal tender, and it has now initiated in the beginning of this year creating correspondent relationships with networks of banks around the world that is becoming networked as correspondents. And when a bank becomes a correspondent with the central depository of the crown, it will be immediately capitalized with a minimum of the equivalent of $1 billion US. Okay? So we don't have to worry about how much Bitcoin or like, get in on Bitcoin now and you're going to ride up, because that's still a model of limitation. Get in now because later you can't. It still has that flavor of there's not enough, there's musical chairs, somebody's going to be eliminated from the game. And then they keep taking the chairs away until only one person is standing. The whole world system is musical chairs, and the Pope at the end is supposed to be the last guy standing, and he owns everything. Okay. So Bitcoin and so forth, to me, are just stepping stones. What I've just described is how we merge the ba and the ka and eliminate the banker in between, Anu, with the whole construct that I've described, which, by the way, was recreated in Rome, because if you were a true Roman, you had to cross over a bridge to enter Rome, if you were a real citizen. Because the civitas had no rights as a citizen. Civitas versus citizen. A citizen entering Rome had to cross over a bridge. That bridge was controlled by the goddess Juno. And her other name was Moneda. So you had to cross the bridge of Juno Moneda, or moneta, or monetary, or money, and pay Anu the toll. Okay, we have to eliminate that. Everything is all about that. Remember I said Israel is the merger of the cults of Isis and Amun-Ra and Elion. There's all kinds of stuff about the other names that apply to all of them. For example, the goddess Isis also had a name like Min. This is where you get minutes, and her name was also Mon, where you get money and monarchy and monastery, and the stellar cult was about stars or asters. So you have monastery, which is where a moon cult and a star cult live, and a stellar cult, etc. It's all of that. It's all over the place. So we don't need to cross her bridge anymore. We are the bank. This currency that I'm talking about is unlimited. We don't have to worry about economic models, hyperinflation, all of that. We just have to become our own bank. This is the mechanism to do it, through a private structure. So the Pantera Friendly Society is now a validly chartered private bank that will, in the next several weeks, become a correspondent, will be capitalized to that level. Will enable the Pantera Bank to issue cashier's checks that are already being accepted by major banks around the world. It has a program called Living Mortgage Free that is set up so we can liquidate and extinguish mortgages. And through that, we'll create a distributed network that every home or office or building that does that to eliminate the debt will have a computer put in it that will become like the Bitcoin miners, the distributed network that cannot be destroyed. So this is all has been there ready to activate, and it is activated now. This is what we're actively building. So we don't have to continue scrapping for capital to either eliminate our debt. The irony is the whole status correction course ultimately in its true form is a mechanism to liquidate debt or extinguish debt and become a solvent, not a bankrupt. But now we can accelerate that. You don't have to go through the full status correction, although I want you to, so we can become qualified electors on the land, and we can hold the land and return our landed estate to the rightful owner, which is us, the true beneficiaries, to be living beneficiaries, not dead fictions. So this is what we came here this weekend to tell you all about. There's a lot more about this, but this is the essence of where we're at. We will be happy to talk to you about this more over the weekend. Well, actually later today and tomorrow. And have you, if you wish, join us. It's not a cult or a hierarchical thing for you to join and sell incense at the airport. Who knows about that one?
Oh, I didn't do it.
Oh, yeah, I bet you. I bought some though. It's nice incense. That was the Hare Krishnas in the 60s and 70s. You know, all of that. The Munis, the Hare Krishnas. I'm old enough to have grown. Some of you are, some of you are not. To have grown through all the cults and et cetera, et cetera. There's only one cult in this world. It's called the cult of death. It's the cult of the Isis-Osiris mystery cult. And all we have to do is remember who we are, as I've said in this, and the whole idea is within what I've described as the estate structure, birthing new societies, using the law form that we have perfected. It's how creation works. It's not hierarchical. Look how creation works. It just creates out of itself. That's how life comes out of a mother. It's how stars are born. It's how planets are created, how life bursts out into the living. It's just creation. So this model is basically how life creates. So if we are creation and we are remembering who we are, then this is simply the model that we as Pantera perfected, and it's our gift to all of you. Thank you. Yes.
Does it apply to Canadians too?
It applies to everybody.
It applies to everybody. I thought.
Yeah.
So how does this look in the real world when, like, say you're driving around, do you have a license or not? Or the cops stop you if you don't, and then you...
Well, you know what? If we get into answering all of that, we just lots of detail.
No quick, like the cop looks you up on the computer and says, oh, this guy's a sovereign, leave him alone.
Yeah, but he won't say sovereign. It's just simply do not detain.
Do not detain.
And yeah.
That's what I'm thinking.
Without going into the detail, there are answers to all of those kind of questions, okay? To do the status correction course, that's what you will learn, okay?
Quick question. You mentioned ISIS, some kind of a god of death or whatever. Is it just an odd, is it an irony that we have this so-called terrorist?
No, it's not an irony. Nothing happens by accident, okay?
Is that symbolic?
Do you know who ISIS is in America? It's called the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, it's everywhere. Again, we can't go into all of that, but, you know, she has many names, but now she's known as Lady Liberty. Okay. It's a false mirroring of the true reality.
I just want to put in a quick positive note. You were talking about entrainment.
Yeah.
And entrainment, there's different definitions. You described one, but one of them is it's like prevailing social or psychological attitude that people are kind of drawn to. So that in energetics, it's like the strongest energy in the room usually wins. So if you walk into a room and it's really negative and you don't have like a strong field, you'll get sucked into it. Or if you're really positive, you can change it. What I wanted to quickly note was with entrainment, it works both ways. So it's like when you harness the power of placebo. If someone like you or like any of us are, putting out this positivity, and I know you don't like to use the word consciousness, so there's probably some other word that we can use better, but perhaps have a holistic understanding of this thing, and actually other people who are perhaps like-minded or are actually waking up, that can also create a type of entrainment wherein just your presence and that your speech and what you're doing here, that's why I had my hands open, because there was an energetic exchange going on. It was that you're actually waking those people up. So there's actually a positive form of entrainment. Entrainment can work to close people down, and it can also work to open people up.
Well, let me interject.
Yeah.
Anything when we get into positive versus negative is still a polarity. Okay.
It's a
What I
limitation of language.
right. Well, I understand that, but language is how we create in many ways. So what I prefer is to say that we stand in our being in the resonance of who we are as stable, balanced beings. And it will automatically stabilize the field. It's like what you're talking about.
Absolutely.
We don't have to sort of negate the negativity because
Just be full.
in a stable environment, it's all whole and it's balanced. Okay.
Great.
So if I understand what you're saying correctly is that you're basically not using Federal Reserve notes any longer in your personal life.
No,
Or
that's not.
society or-
That's not true. What I'm not doing is allowing myself to be both the surety and the source of continuing creation of monetized debt. So when you do what I've described as the status correction course, I mean, in the ultimate expression, yes, you are not supposed to use Federal Reserve notes, but there's not, as yet, a mechanism for us to completely disconnect from it. It's coming soon, and what I described at the end with the currencies and the banking, we'll be able to do that in the not-too-distant future. But so far, you know, it's certainly impracticalities relative to that. But the key is your franchise no longer creates monetized debt. Everything that comes in the form of a piece of paper, traffic ticket or a court order or anything, is simply an offer to contract. And we as a registered agent accept the service of process because we accepted the driver's license and became a driver of commerce, and it creates a security under the Uniform Commercial Code. Now when it comes, the one thing I didn't talk about, I just mentioned, is the maxims of equity. One of those maxims is, and remember I said that if you don't have standing, you can't claim equity. Because see, every time a piece of paper is created, what's created on the public side is the debt. So we're all like spinning on the hamster wheels, chasing the debt, paying off the debt, pledging of death in the mortgage and all the rest of it. But on the backside in the private, they're building this vast amount of equity by trading that debt, creating bonds that get traded off book, off of the public banking system. And that's how they've paid for all the underground bunkers, all of the prison planet, all of the off-book stuff for the CIA, all the secret space programs, all of it with the off-book equities. So we claim our equity because once you perfect your status, you're no longer a bankrupt, you can claim the equity. The maximum of equity, and there are only 20. So all you have to learn is 20 maxims instead of 80 million codes. Who wants to learn about equity? Okay. True equity. Okay, so one of those maxims is equity will not perfect an imperfect gift. Because everything that's created from the birth certificate as the original deed to everything off of that franchise is a gift behind which is the equity. But if we are a bankrupt, we have no capacity to claim that gift and perfect it. So what we do as perfected status private American nationals, everything that comes to us, we accept because we're accepting the deed. And therefore we have the ability to claim the equity. Okay, it's still a process, a continuum in process that we haven't perfected everything. You know, we haven't perfected where everything is done without using FRNs and all the rest of it. But that's the basis of it.
So a private organization, a private trust is able to use Federal Reserve notes and use public debt.
Well, not necessarily. Yeah, a private one can, but it doesn't have to be private. Only a public entity can use military script because it's under military occupation. Federal Reserve notes are military script under the military occupation. Okay. So.
And so you don't operate corporations at all. You're a trust.
Correct.
Private organization, but you don't have corporations in other jurisdictions or anything like that.
No, we do. We use international corporations for certain purposes. So that's what I mean, what I meant earlier when I said you have a private society, an office that holds the assets for the purpose of the mission of the private society. That office, which is a corporation sole, not a corporation. Corporation sole is a single office without officers or directors. It has a office holder, which would be you in your creation of the same. That's the overseer. And you can create all kinds of entities. If you need to be in commerce for some reason, and a lot of people have certain things they're doing that you need to operate in commerce, then you can use an LLC or a corporation to do that. So we can use all the tools. It's essentially being in the world but not of it. Okay, so, but we have foreign corporations. Pantera has lots of entities all around the world. And that's a multi-layered, multi-jurisdictional structure, and you are in the center operating and conducting it. This is how I've operated my affairs and then building Pantera for over 20 years. So I know what I'm talking about. It's never been breached. There's never been a problem. It cannot be touched. The IRS have been trying to attack us for the last year, and as I mentioned, for those of you who watched my interview with Jeff, in the last 6 months, I appointed the IRS officer as my trustee. Because the beneficiary, one of the maxims of equity is the beneficiary is the true owner. In trust law, you have split title. The legal title is held by the trustee. Because he has legal title, he has all the liabilities. So our trustee is the commander-in-chief. We give it all back to them. Fine, you can have that property, but that's only fictional property. When we have our landed estate in our body and the land that we put our toes into the soil, that they cannot have. Only a living man assessed to KV can have that estate. So, hang on. So the legal title holder is the trustee. They have all the liabilities. So you send all the bills and all the claims and all the liabilities to them. We're still perfecting the enforcement of that because they're not happy about it, but they have to follow the law. Okay. So we're using the system exactly as it was designed, so we don't have to be in conflict with it. We don't have to have a controversy relative to it. And so because a controversy creates conflict, creates a polarity, creates a battlefield. So nothing we do invokes that polarity.
Which is why they have all the guns, the ammo, the soldiers, because they're waiting for you to create controversy so they can come and engage you. That's what they want.
Yeah.
That's why he says pull away from the field of battle, because they are prepared for that field of battle. And they
Right.
will take you down. They have no problem killing you.
Obviously, we've seen that. So, agree with your adversary. Settle the matter. That's all you need to do. So we've reproduced the essential elements of the system: trust law and estate law. We hold the estate. The ultimate ancestral estate is in every cell of your body. It's who you are. It's the resonance of your being. Okay, light, the whole thing about light and from the Christian concept of light to the New Age concept, light is created by friction of sound vibration. We are ultimately, originally sound, and we've lost ourselves in the illusion of all of this outside of ourselves. So that's a long story. We won't go into that, and got a few more questions.
Yeah. Gentleman in the back with the green hat, you had a question?
What is the function, you think, of all this Illuminati symbolism that we've been seeing in popular culture, especially over the past couple of years?
What's the function of it?
Yeah.
The function is because we are the creator capacity, we're the creator of it all. It's hidden in plain sight, so we take it in, but the conscious mind is not aware of it. We take it down into the deeper levels of the mind system to activate the externalization of it and create it in the hologram. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's the red pill. Once you see it, but see, most people teaching about all the Illuminati symbols and all this, stuff, corporate logos and everything, have not taken it to the full degree of understanding how we're creating it and what the interface between that symbolic construct that are basically sound bites. They're holographic sound bites that invoke our being to recreate it through our minds and create it into the hologram that they can control.
All right, I have a short question. I mean, this external journey you're talking about, like creation, we're living in this holographic kind of prison, we're creating ourselves as eternal beings, and we're moving forward to more oneness and reaching ourselves on the level. Maybe the question would be like, in this process that Ontario is doing, we were talking about understanding this holographic universe more of, so playing with it and withdrawing from battle, as you're saying, to reaching oneness. So that's the externalization of it. But you talked in the beginning of the talk that actually we're, as above, so below, and so within, so without. So I mean, going within you. I mean, can't we just create a new reality without these toying with the laws of the already created reality?
The simple answer is no.
No.
We are too hardwired to it to try to extract her. So that's trying to leave something, okay, as if it is outside of us, as we can just disconnect from it. It is our creation.
Yes.
Okay, we have to take full responsibility for it, as I said, and stabilize ourselves within it. It is only, remember, there are no enemies, there are only opportunities. So anything that comes up in our movie screen as a anything external to us, we must take full responsibility for, heal it within, and then the external will start stabilizing and balancing without.
Okay, so it's a combination of both going within and stabilizing there, and the opportunities that arises in your life externally. Toying with the system in the correct way, according to laws of withdrawing from the battle, and then harmonizing that.
It's a good way to put it.
Okay.
Yeah.
You spoke of a currency that the UN recognized and
Well, the U.S. court system and the IRS recognizes it as a currency.
and it was recently, it sounds.
Well, basically, to finish that up, and then take a couple more questions, then we're going to call it. Okay, because I know we could stand here, or I'm standing, you're sitting comfortably while I'm standing, and my knees are for many hours answering questions. But a lot of this, virtually all of it, is on the Gemstone site. But just to wrap up that point, so you understand what that is. In 312 A.D., Constantine, many of you know Christian history, know the story. You know, he saw the cross and he created the army of Christ and won the battle, became the only emperor. There were two emperors, and they duked it out, and he won, etc. He created three entities. One has been very little known throughout history, at least our modern history. But the other two were the Western Church that became the Roman Catholic Church, and the Eastern Church, which became the Byzantine Eastern Orthodox Church. And they've duked it out for centuries, and the Ottoman Empire came up, and you know, it's been going on for a long time. The third one is called the Crown of St. Stephen. Okay, and the word Stephen is actually, the etymology of it basically means the crown. That was intended to be the real army of Christ, and as I said, there is nothing external to us as the unified beings of creation that we actually are. And so that crown held the Roman law and put that law in place throughout all the countries other than the Islamic countries that adopted one form or another of Roman law. In the meantime, the churches did what they did. The crown was put into exile in the 1450s region, and I don't know all the detail about that, but basically that's when the Ottoman Empire was birthed. And the land base for the crown was in the what we now call what was the Austro-Hungary Empire, and the Balkans, Slavic, Serbia, Yugoslavia, all that fighting area is where the crown was. And it was basically the holder of the law. It was exiled then, and then after World War I, which was initiated by the cabal and the Rothschilds and everything to break up the Ottoman Empire and institute the second phase of the plan in taking control of the Middle East and outpicturing everything that we've seen in the last 100 years. And the current Third World War was started around then. So they fled and basically took the crown to Argentina, and they've been there for the last 100 years. So the currency that we're speaking of is something called Zcash. Z as in zebra, Z, and so forth. And that's what has been perfected over 20 years. And in 2006 or thereabouts, the SEC brought the court case. They got a stalemate on it, which recognized it as a currency. The IRS has issued a circular that recognizes it as a currency. And through more history over the last several years, eventually the Crown recognized it as the best means to do what it is now doing. So it adopted it as legal tender. And it has to be recognized in the entire world system. And because it is the holder of Roman law, or the giver of the law, essentially all the assets of all the people and the land and the true nations, not the corporate nationalities, under that law basically is the asset base. So they are issuing currency that is debt-free and doing what I described in terms of programs that are now being set that we're actively involved with, that we're teaching our members in Gemstone what's going on. Minimally, to start with, the Living Mortgage Free program, to get rid of the mortgage, to capitalize these correspondent banks and start funding the projects. So that's the brief summary of the history.
Private American nationals, I'm sure, can live anywhere on the planet.
Yeah.
But is there a geographic place that self-gather and live in?
Yeah, and our headquarters house in Upland, California. That's a large aggregation of, they're flowing through all the time, you know. It's like these two back there, you know, they showed up and said, hey, we're private American. Well, come on in. We can't get rid of them. They follow me all the way down here. What can I do?
Actually, to answer your question, really, there is no home base for a private American national. It's wherever their being is. That's
Yeah,
their home base.
but we want to be claiming a piece of land and establishing that. That's a long story. We won't go into it, but right now. But yes, you can go anywhere on the planet. But your grounding point is where you abide, not where you reside, because to reside means you attach yourself to the franchise. Res identity. That's what a resident is. That's a citizen that is property of the state, a resident. So a res identity, res in law means the property. So you're establishing that your identity is the property of the state when you say you're a citizen of the United States as a resident of the United States. So that's the last thing you want to be, as a resident. To abide somewhere means to be grounded, to be standing where you choose to create your abode. So once you do that and you claim land, so if you already have a home and you remove the mortgage overlay, now we have the tool to do that with the Living Mortgage Free program, then you can claim the land. But you can't claim the land until you correct your status. So it's all integrated.
Hold on. In the back.
Just a little bit about the concept of containers, deployments, installations.
Can you speak up?
You mentioned that in your talk the concept of containers or containment. In one instance, I believe you said that civics was a container for the life force.
Containment field.
Containment field, yeah.
Right, and also I think perhaps you could say like our body is in this world a container for our being. I'm wondering maybe if you have any opinion on, right now we're seeing kind of the emergence of virtual reality, and specifically, or kind of digital technology in general, how it's evolving, whether or not there's possibly some effort to kind of create a container within the container,
Yeah,
kind of like
yeah.
another level of conception to put us further.
Absolutely. And that's a big story. But the answer is absolutely. It's about projecting through the mind into that virtual reality instead of being here in life.
Eventually, you won't need currencies. Eventually, we won't need money. Money is just a tool for enslavement. Once you have the ability to live without needing to go and work for the energy that you need to keep your house warm, for the food that you create, then you start to become a creative life force because you're not out destroying your life trying to be able to live.
In terms of like international travel, do you have anything special that you do with your passport, or what's the issuing authority for your passport? Do you have some form of like diplomatic immunity?
Yeah, right now we're in stages of dealing with that. If you have a current passport, that passport belongs to the franchise. Most likely you put a social security number on it. You claim that you were born in, say, Los Angeles, California, which is a corporate state, a corporate municipal corporation. You didn't say you were born in Los Angeles, California, a state of the Union. And, very likely you said you were a U.S. citizen, which is not what you want to be. So you have to cancel that. and then you reissue an application filled out the correct way with an addendum that says this is who I am. You really can't do that unless you do the status correction process and take the steps to get to there. So the short answer is you still go to the Department of State, but you put it on the record, and we create authenticated records of that before we submit it as an addendum to the application, because they won't let you change the application, but they will allow you to create an addendum, and the addendum is extremely binding on them of who we are and so forth. So you create a record, and that's the whole, remember I talked about the court record and all of that. We're creating an evidentiary record of everything we do. And my experience in doing commercial process and administrative process, things like that, has been distilled down to understanding how to do exactly what we need to do with the status correction, how to claim the equities, do all the things we need to do with estate law, trust law, and all the rest of that. And eventually, we will get them to give us what you're asking, a true passport. We're not quite there yet. We've had to build all the foundational layers. It's taken us thousands of man hours and woman hours to get to where we're at. We're still pushing the envelope to get them to comply. But
We're going to take 2 more questions. We got one here in the back.
the lady in the green dress here will be the last question. She's been trying to get with the green stripes. I like those green stripes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Will you be utilizing blockchain technology for the documents and passports and whatnot?
Maybe, but I'm not the tech guy.
You
So
should learn more about it.
yeah, I'm not the tech guy, so possibly, but we will integrate the best of technology because it is our best tool. There is going to be built, well, we're going to build, but it's not building from scratch. We're going to integrate the best of what's already out there, a global backbone for the Global Media Alliance, and we're going to do it in synergy with the distributed network of the computer system that the Crown for the Zcash and so forth is putting in place via the mortgage-free program, and basically create a global network, a virtual private network and a private economy that basically we will be able to shift into more and more. It's going to happen very fast.
It'll be the most highly secure and impenetrable system ever on the planet.
Okay, one more question. Who's that?
If someone had tried to decouple from the system using methods similar to what you have here that you're discussing today, and have gotten partway through the process, in order to use your process, we have to undo what we've done so far in order to continue and pick up where you left off.
Possibly with the question for the recording is if somebody has done something similar but using whatever techniques or combination of things and is partly through that, would it have to be undone and start from the beginning? Definitely you would start from the beginning of our process. Some of the things that you did may need to be undone. It would have to be looked at, and we definitely, we have a team to look at that and help evaluate that because there are hidden hooks in that. A lot of people have pieces, some very advanced, but if there's a hidden hook that creates what's called a traversal, which takes you back from the private, back to attachment into the public, then it needs to be disconnected. So that would be the answer. So I'm going to call it, and thank you very much.